with Michelle and Sasha. And today we explore maybe oftentimes overlooked topic when it comes on canine nutrition. What we called it, and for a long time there was this very interesting name introduced into a holistic pet space, I would say species appropriate nutrition. So what is a species appropriate diet for the dogs? And we should explore a little bit how pet parent choices that they make at home by choosing what they're going to feed their dog with affect the dogs on our table. And then where do we go from there? Or actually, how do we go from there? Because oftentimes, not only that the bad or poor nutrition can show up in the dog's health and overall well-being, it can also show up in a much reactive state of the dog, in which dog comes, and then when exposed to environment like professional dog grooming, the dogs might end up perceiving the world as much more threatened, and it has nothing to do with anything rather than just the nutrition.
They're
And
just
you have
undernourished. Right?
Sorry?
They're just undernourished.
Undernourished, yes.
Yeah.
Undernourished, or actually also the reason why the dogs it's not necessarily that the food they eat is lacking minerals or lacking any nutrition, but what might also happen is a possibility of the body to utilize, to destructure, and to get down to usable nutrients. So did you have, through your professional life as a dog groomer, as a professional in the pet care space, like when did you start thinking about the nutrition in a sense that, oh, maybe I should, because I know that in your everyday practice, you practice working with the trace minerals and trying to put things together and, direct the nutrients in the dog's body through their skin, on some of which, like, we also build our entire cosmetic thinking on, and that was for me was fascinating when we come to talk about these things, and then ended up on the same path. But when did you start thinking about, nutrition also might play a big role, and then let me see how I can do something there?
So I had a Maltese who I rescued, was given a little Maltese, and she was precious and she was raised as a princess. But I got her when she was 9, and I put her on Hill's diet prescription because they're delicate for whatever reason. And I'll get into that here in a second. But she was on this diet, and she died of congestive heart failure when she was 12. Now, she came from a place where she was very well taken care of, could get the best of the food and this, that, and the other. But I worked for a practice that really pushed Hill's nutrition, Hill's diet. And I'm not saying anything bad about Hill's. This is just my observation with my own personal dogs. And then I really started thinking about it. So I got another Maltese. Now, she was 4. And she had been eating off the floor in the garbage. She got her water from the shower because her owner was in hospice care. So she did whatever she could, and she was a street urchin. She didn't know anything, but she was my precious baby. Well, she ended up developing issues. So we put her on the same thing that was supposed to be good for her, and she was delicate. She died when she was 12 years old of congestive heart failure. These are 2 different lines of breeding, 2 different areas, 2 different owners. One had top of the line food, one had hospice care and was just kind of throwing food down on the floor for her to eat. Yet they still died at the same age, died of congestive heart failure. And I said, something is going on here. Something is happening. So at that time, I'm like, so I have to find another food. Now I feed raw. I feed primal raw. And my experience at the zoo, and I heard somebody discuss something, and I was at the same table when I was at the IACP conference. And they were talking about, well, this nutrition or that nutrition or this food or that food. And I said, you know what? It really makes sense to me that when I worked at the zoo, every single exhibit had a species-specific diet. Humans have a species-specific diet. Why wouldn't dogs need a species-specific diet? So then I really started researching a little bit, and I feel like raw is the way to go. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh my God, you're going to get salmonella. Oh my God, you're going to die. Well, number one, if that's the way I go, that's the way I go because I love dogs and they're getting the correct diet. On the other hand, if they were so horrible, you can't eat a piece of lettuce nowadays and it causes somebody to get sick and they pull the entire thing off the market.
Mm,
So if raw food was so horrible, they would pull it off the market because it's around children, old people, families, people who have dogs. I just believe that is their appropriate diet, and this is just my opinion. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a veterinarian. I can't diagnose. I can't say, well, this is what your dog should eat. I just know from my experience and from what I know, dogs do have a species specific diet, and it should, whatever you feed them, should resemble that as
mm,
closely as possible for them to be healthy. I now have a dog, two dogs who are over 12 who eat raw and are very happy and healthy. One is just now trying to grow hair in because when she came to me, like I told you before, she had seizures all the time, like daily, all the time, all day. And it was terrible. And I think she lost her fur because of that. But she's now, because of her diet and because of the care that she's got, and she's calm and she's loved and she's finally coming up and acting like a dog, she's just now growing hair across her back. So I think that does have something to do with it. The diet does affect them, along with their environment, how they're treated, if they're given enough snuffle time, all the things that dogs need to be healthy in their mind and their body. So that's where I started, and that's my stance currently. It could change if new information comes, but they do get an herbal supplement because I am a clinical herbologist, and I feel like that really does keep them healthy. Their eyes are bright. They don't get sick, and they're happy. And ultimately, that's what we want.
that's all what counts. My journey to that was a little different again. When I was showing show handler, I would go for the all kibble. So that was like, but this dog was on that kibble and this was on that kibble. Yeah, kind of like, because I must say those were like $1 million show dog careers.
Right.
Oftentimes had sponsors, so their owners had the sponsors, and I just needed to go with whatever. So this dog had this brand after them, and then this dog had that brand after them, and then they used all their success into their marketing campaigns. So I was just doing what I was paid to do, kind of at the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely, absolutely.
And do I have regrets from this point where I stand today? Maybe, but with that level of the consciousness and what I was doing young in this professional, I was like everyone else trying to do the best. But later on, when I retired from the pet space, from the show world space, and slowly starting, getting my brand to be a little bit more known in the pet space, pet parent space, and especially when I started my line of shampoos. That was, we get a great response, and one shampoo and one conditioner for any coat expression. So anything that you can see, you have one shampoo and one conditioner. And then the question becomes like, how is that possible? Because I was building my career on all kind of different products. So I had my cleaning shampoo, I had my texturizing shampoo, I had my appropriate conditioner, and I have a texturizer sprays. So that would be the show day. And then after day, I would have a cleaning shampoo, I would have a nourishing shampoo, and I would have a nourishing conditioner. So all of that was, and that was per dog. So I had like, and it was not by collection. So I some shampoo, I like this one, and then some texturizing shampoo, I like that one, and then nourishing conditioner from. So I made my collection from the lot of different brands. And then when I finally did the research, and we can maybe touch base with that story in some other shows, but I actually launched this 10 years ago slowly. It was like 2016 was when we launched our shampoo. So that's actually 20 years, 10 years ago. So this is a 10 years anniversary this way. And then the results were immediately great. But then at some point, the idea, I was starting to use that phrase, like when the coat is clean and properly hydrated, tends to express itself into own natural state, whatever that natural state is. So the poodle will get volumized coat, the Yorkie will get silky coat, but also anything in between. The poodle, without a good quality coat in its essence, gonna express its not well developed coat. And that's nothing. And then in my essence was, okay, now we need to build more shampoos and more conditioners and more this and more that. So we help this coat express. But then I was putting a service. Why would I care at this point of making a cosmetic intervention on the coat when the coat doesn't grow properly? So we should actually go beneath the skin and try to fix something there. And
Yeah,
that
it
was actually
starts with the skin. Absolutely. All the
right?
time.
And instead of building up more shampoos and more conditioners and more tools to help coat to look better, we actually ended up developing a supplement line. So it's something that the dogs drink and eat, and to be able to build a better coat, more resilient coat, more kind of like omega-3 acids, things like that. So we built like a collection of 5 different supplements, and that was it. But then as we went through the couple of years of having a supplement and cosmetic work together, we again hit a roadblock, and I said, well, supplements now also work until a certain point. What's next? And then the next thing was, what do we feed our dog with? So we supplement with the supplements, but what is the essence of the feeding dogs? And then I started to research about the species appropriate diet, because at the time when I was getting into this understanding, the raw food industry was getting a big flashback or kind of a hit back because of the lot of recalls. And we can see now that oftentimes if you feed raw, it's always better for you to go and do raw by finding sources to raw rather than buy from the kind of like brands that are packaging it for you or delivering it to you, because there is a lot of chains in which the things can go wrong. And that's where oftentimes we can see now in this statistic that actually, since they launched raw food diet, the brands are immediately stepping in, trying to make money on that, right? And but if we compare a number of the brands and the amount of their market life since they are on market, and we compare kibble industry with the raw food industry food, percentage-wise, raw food brands have much more recalls. Exactly, salmonella is one of the reasons, but they are very transparent on that. But being transparent on that and having to pay price for getting your dog sick is a big, for you it's old world, for the company is one number. So, and then at one point also I start to see that what you said exactly in one point of your when you was talking about that is supplementation, because the raw diet need a supplementation and need essential additives to be added to the food, and then later on the raw food diet movement flooded the market with the supplements, additives, and everything else. So now they're selling the raw materials and food, and then based on type of the dog, and now we are back to the supplementing the raw food, because of some reason the dogs are not reaching and getting as much as nutrients.
They're not absorbing what they're getting,
and that's need to be supplemented. And then I find a very interesting, and that's maybe you can research on that, and maybe that might change a little bit perception. What a species appropriate diet, because I don't know, do you actually know that the modern science, when it comes to dogs, doesn't have a consensus about who the
Yes,
dog
I
and
do
what the
know
dog
that.
is.
I
You know
do
that,
know
right?
that. Yes.
So that's
Oh
kind of
my
like
gosh.
the question is like what means species appropriate diet if we cannot define the species? That's the whole point, right? And there was in one moment of my research, I came up in this evolutionary trajectory of, it's very interesting. Wolf and the dog as the beginning of the evolutionary chain and the end of the evolutionary chain exist within the same time in which we are always able, assuming that that's what happened, the wolf become a dogs, right? And we have a genetically very easy connection because the dog and a wolf can breed together to produce produce offspring that can reproduce. And just on its own,
Yes.
that's a definition of being the same species. So now it's assumed that if we are the same species, then the species appropriate diet for dog is what the wolves eat. But then there is a study in which actually the evolution of the dog for the first time calls into specific term that happens in the nature, not as often as maybe it's not mainstreamly known term, but it's called neoteny. And neoteny is a way in which the species preserve their infant traits in order to achieve some benefits from the, become more resourceful, let's call it that way. And that the same study or same scientific movement or a little direction of the explaining the evolutionary chain, because everyone that tried to domesticate the wolf never succeeded the experiment. So you cannot go out there, take a wolf, and make it become your pet, because if it's not neuter or spayed, it's going to come a moment in which instinctively it's going to challenge the older one, the leader, not to be more dominant over them, just to put everyone in its place. And there is a lot of studies in which the scientists try to take wolves out from the mom from the first day, day 15, day 7, day 9, day 10. So that's idea that the wolves became dogs by people going out in a wood and finding the little puppy, taking him home and making him suddenly become a dog just doesn't ring the bell. And last
Unless
time
it's
when we talked,
unless it's a female. If it's a female, you can do that. With males, you can't. And I
yeah, but
think something that's
still you
often
need to breed
overlooked.
them somehow with something. Like, and if that would be that you don't have a dogs at that time, so what would you breed a female with? You need something to breed her with. That's probably going to be another wolf. But now you are right, because that's not now my puppy wolf female. What should I do with it if there is no male to keep making dogs from that little thing? I'm sorry I interrupted you. You wanted to say something.
I said it's often overlooked also that people think, okay, it's the wolf's diet. Okay, think about that for a moment. It's not just wolf's diet, it's a canid diet. That's what's important. And I think that is so missed, even in research. If you look, there are dogs that eat primarily meat. There are dogs that eat fruit. The maned wolf, which is a dog, a wild dog, is a fruit eater, basically. They eat both. They eat plant matter. They eat, just whatever they can find. They're pariah dogs that eat whatever. They eat plastic out of the trash and they survive somehow. So it's not just the wolf, it's the canid species that are looking for things to eat. And we have to look at not only what they eat, but how they absorb what you feed them.
But look at this now. What becomes like very interesting in this research of mine. If we assume, let's say that, if we assume that a neoteny took place, so that the part of the wolf pack that was not as aggressive as the alpha pair and beta wolves and things like that. So we are talking about the deeper layers of the pack that was later on, both and confirmed by a silver fox experiment. And I think this is a good place to talk about that, because all of these that we do when we are looking underneath the coat, we need to come to exactly this point. In order to provide the species appropriate care, we need to define the species. And that's, whole point of that is. But if you go after this movement of the people describing dog as a wolf puppy, because that's what happened. Because if we observe the dogs, no matter how old they are, they do have a juvenile behavior. They have they become like, if you would see, they would never behave like an old wolf, because the older the wolf become, more serious animal it becomes, because more safety and reliability responsibilities they have to maintain the pack order. But the dog somehow tends to have this juvenile traits and behavior that actually matches this possibility and theory that they might preserve through this phenomena called neoteny traits of the puppy-like behavior. But if you want to maintain the puppy-like behavior, you're probably going to maintain a puppy-like physiology in order to overcome, in order to provide you because we put a lot of pieces together in which we say, as we build the body, outcome of that body gonna be a way that that animal can perceive the environment. So the body structure and body way of interacting, how the body is built on its own, gonna be essence to the behavior. And because the behavior is just an reactivity of the body to outside stimulus. So the body need to be first, and then the way that body behaves within the environment and context, it becomes a reaction to the environment and context. But what if the puppy-like neoteny preserved characteristic of the dog's behavior made them closer to humans, because now they are not afraid as much. Now they are having entire different way of hormonal interaction, in which they said, like, once you remove adrenaline as a driving hormone of survival and constantly be in this flight and fight mode, that the wolf and every other animal, that aside from fighting for the food and protecting it, need to fight with the other same species predators that are kind of like all on top of them. So the dogs does not have that as much when they choose humans to protect them. So the dogs well played this game, right? I mean, very, very, very well played this game. But then the puppies are fed the way that the dogs, the wolves are going to hunt long miles away from them. And the only way for them to bring home food would be to eat the food, come home and vomit.
Yeah.
But now, Michelle, we are talking of half digested food in the stomach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and as I went through this thinking about, if we stop here and try to think about that there is a reason why the puppies behave as the puppy, because of their juvenile physiology. So, and we assign those traits to a dog, and we say the dog is wolf, but within the certain age of the wolf development, meaning preserved all puppy-like characteristics and later survive on them, meaning that actually they will thrive much better on a gently cooked food. Exactly as the parents would half cook in the stomach acid the food that will come home and then regurgitate to them, and then left the puppies eat that and be able to thrive on that food. That is because the digestion of the meat is a long chain of the amino acid, and that's why we are processing it, because the cooking, but not overcooking it, not cooking it, in those slow cookers to drain everything out but just to cook it enough, or under the pressure cooker. I find the pressure cooking an amazing tool, and just 15 minutes, not much, like maybe even that is sometime too long, just to help initiate the digestion of the breaking the long chains of the protein in the muscle. So the body of the dog starts to have much less job on the overload, so they don't need so much supplementation, because they would be able to break much more into a protein that actually and all other nutrients that
Yeah,
exist
I
in the
see what you're
food.
getting at. Yeah, I see. I understand what you're
Doesn't
saying.
that it's
It does
interesting
make sense.
perception?
However, some of the raw food preparations are ground so finely that the dogs can digest them and they are proper. I just think that it is probably a mixture of those because when I feed uh, any kind of human food to my dogs, I absolutely chew it first. If I want to offer them a piece of steak or chicken or whatever, they do eat food out of my mouth. I chew it first because I don't want them to have any sauces or, whatever might be on it or whatever. And I want to break it down a little bit. I think the breaking down of it matters as
Mm.
well as what you say, that it should be gently cooked
Yeah,
or just
very
maybe
gently
thrown in the
cooked. Yeah.
pan and then ground up really nicely. I think that really has probably something to do with it. And it has a lot to do with the breed that you have. I've got little dogs that are super sensitive to things, so they don't just get anything. Big dogs, half of them you can throw them an old shoe and they'll happily eat it and it's fine. So I think it matters depending on what breed it is, how big the dog is. There are a lot of factors. And I don't think just puppies were able to come up to humans. I think adult dogs found a way because they are so observant, which we discussed before. They observed that there was value in sticking outside of the campsite, sticking outside of the campfire, and gathering up scraps. Just like you were mentioning also the silver fox experiments, they've taken foxes out of the wild and were able to breed them into domestication in our lifetime. So I think that's pretty interesting as well. So it tells you how adaptable and how observant they really are as a animal.
So there was my kind of like very interesting perception in which I say, well, raw diet is a way to go, but if we would go one step further, now we are into a gently cooked food just to help start initiating the
Hmm.
digestion within the pot. So it's not
Hmm.
a mom's stomach anymore, but
Hmm.
it's a pressure cooker for 10-15 minutes. But
Hmm.
also I must say something else happened in my research, because we somehow, you said, like, depending on a lot of contexts, for one dog it's going to work one thing, for the other dog going to work much better one other thing. I find this perception of the mineral balancing, because we can we can survive without a protein because the body is built on a protein and there is always a source of the protein, and getting too closer to your own protein when the body needs it. For the
Hmm.
energy, the body can research to the ketones through transforming the fat into ketones and energy, and the
Hmm.
brain can structure on that. So there is a lot of energy reserves. So the dog, not necessarily, the body does not necessarily need carbohydrates or the fats, because the depots and the how you say that depots, right? Depots in the body exist. So when the body needs it, it can reach out from them. Vitamins. Now we are going. So these were the macronutrients, and
Hmm.
then on the contrast, now we have micronutrients that are vitamins and minerals, and a lot of vitamins can be produced in the body because a lot of them act as hormones.
Hmm.
But what cannot be produced in a body in any way is a mineral. Mineral
Hmm.
content of that daily diet is
Hmm.
like everywhere in between 5 and 7%. But those
Hmm.
5 and 7% are the essence of our existence, and not only ours, but every single animal in the world. So, and
Hmm.
the only way to get that nutrients that the body need, and everything that happens in our body on any level within the cell, it's happening because of the interaction of the minerals. Some are going out, going in, getting together. So now it's not a mineral, it's a molecule. And then that molecule acts like a neurotransmitter or transmits something else. So, but essence of entire life is mineral. And how the minerals get into the body? Well, before any life existed on this planet, there were minerals. And when the environment reached such a kind of like such a when environment become stimulative for those minerals to start interact together. That's how the life started to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, because on the end we came out from Earth, and we're gonna get back to Earth, and all what's gonna left after us once all is decomposed, even if we get
Little
burned on
pile of
any level,
minerals. Yeah.
only mineral is going to be left after us for someone else too. So if we observe how the world became, it was like all of these minerals ended up in the earth, in the soil, through the rain, going through the mountains, and then the meteors getting into. So all of that brings all kind of minerals into the soil.
Volcanoes.
Volcanoes, actually.
Yeah, anything that pulls it up from the earth itself. Yeah.
Then the plants are eating the minerals from the soil, and then the humans gonna either eat plants, and sometimes we can get some minerals from the plant, but some minerals we cannot access from the plant-based diet. We need to take them already digested by other animal, and
Herbivores
unfortunately
are the
like
ones that transform the minerals into the meat and the protein.
Didn't we talked
Yeah.
about that like I was vegetarian for like 17 years, and I almost died on that path, and my way back was a bacon. And I said, like, because without a bacon you cannot, because a lot of the minerals and a lot of ports, a lot of essential needs of the body can be digested only if there is a fat or oil on a side. So I was trying to do with the flaxseed oil and this oil and that oil, but literally the bacon was one that got me back to life. I was literally being disgusted by eating it and eating it at the same time.
Because you want to live.
Sorry?
You want to live.
Yeah, because that was my guiding force was, I need to live, because my body was completely in psoriasis. I was like itching everywhere, and my mood was like literally low to the ground. And then I said, okay, do you wanna have a perception of the world, or you want to live, as you said? So that was literally my decision on, I let me live, because maybe there is more to do on this world before I live. And then my nutritionist told me, I completely understand, I completely sympathize with you, I have empathy for your beliefs and everything that you are trying to do in the world, but if you literally do not try. And she said bacon, and then I find the bacon, and the bacon tasted awful. And I would, oftentimes I would vomit because it was so awful, but I kept doing it. And
It tastes so rich, especially if you've deprived your body of it for a long time.
Yes,
if you think about
was.
it, ruminants were put here on the earth to process the sun and the minerals into a form of protein that we eat and benefit from. We can't eat enough vegetables and then process it like a ruminant. And a ruminant is someone with 4 stomachs. The animals that chew cud, the animals that process that, they are the intermediary between the sun and the minerals and us. So you have to utilize that and to think about that. When a wild dog pack would have a kill, the first thing that goes is the most nutritious part of it is the stomach, the intestines, all the offal. Those are the prizes. However, there are protein deficiencies, not only in dogs, but in humans too. 35%-ish of all the protein that you eat goes for the skin, because that's what it's made out of. You have to have it. You have to have the protein. So protein is important. Meat is important. And if everything eats everything else on this earth, it's not morally wrong. It may be ethically wrong to you in your brain, but you're getting farther and farther away from how this ecosystem works. We all eat the sun, but not all of us can process that sun into the minerals that will then nourish us. So it's an intermediary step.
Did you went in your life through the vegetarian vegan period?
I've been raw before, raw vegan. I've been raw vegetarian. I went through it all. We experienced all of those things. And it seems that meat is the way to go especially for a female, as opposed to a male human. It is very different as well. I have to have more fats than a male would have because we process those things differently, you
Mm,
know. So when you're talking about nutrition, sometimes it can be very individualized, and
mm.
some people do better with less meat. A lot of people do better with more meat, and the dogs are the same. I have one of my dogs, the one with the seizures, she will pass up meat to eat a cucumber. So
Oh,
that tells you something in her brain, and what she's craving is those minerals that mean something to her. And then she'll eat the meat, but she'll eat it later. She wants the blueberry before she'll eat the little minnow fish.
mm.
It's really wild to watch and observe
I
while the
must
other
tell you,
one wants to eat the meat.
it's also very interesting now that you point that out. The way how the dogs are structured themselves in the environment. We see. I did a study, one of the study in India. It was like very important study for me when I was like trying to connect the impact of the human belief on
Mm,
the dog's life. And I had a study that I'm just about to publish. I'm still kind of like looking for the journal to get it out. That was talking actually using a HTMA, like hair tissue mineral analysis, to track the data.
mhm,
But and then the dogs that participated in the study, they were assigned on the beginning of the study, not assigned, just we checked which kind of diet they had, what supplementation they had, and if they were not sick, they could become a part of the study group. So they supposed to remain on the same food through the
right.
entire course of 3 months that the study lasted. And then we had so that the study group needed to be persistent, and then the control group, they could do whatever they want. They could
Mm,
change, they could do this, they could do that, but the study should. But also primarily reason for this was implementation of the Doggy Parent Academy, that I built a program
mm,
that leads people to change their behavior, implementing routinely predictable behavior of the human, lowering
mm,
the stress and a cortisol spike in the dog. And my idea, my hypothesis was that if the human change their behavior and only provide a safe environment for the dogs to live in, predictable and safe environment, even if they don't change the food and they don't change the supplementation, the possibility of the dog to use more and to
mm,
keep more from the food, the same food,
mhm,
nothing
mhm,
changed, would be of beneficial. Now,
mhm,
because the study is not published, I cannot and I don't want to really reveal, but I'm so
mhm,
proud of what we find in this study. And at that point, I was also being interested in this species appropriate diet. So
mhm,
I was blessed enough to have a very good team in India in which I was exploring the dynamic of the dog that lived in a primarily vegetarian environment. So
mhm,
those dogs are living in the villages or within the family, like free-ranging dogs. Those dogs are in India. You can have them everywhere. And India's village is not like our village. You
right.
have houses that are open and there is no yard or backyard. Everything is open, right? So and they are very tribish,
Mhm,
family-like oriented neighborhoods. But then, if you have a village that's predominantly vegetarian because of their beliefs and their religious Hindu or Buddhist practices,
mm,
you won't have a butcher house
right.
in that village. But you still have dogs, free
Mhm,
roaming dogs that choose to stay and live off the leftovers of predominantly vegetarian diets.
mhm. Well, they
So
supplement also, wouldn't you think, with rats and lizards and insects and all kinds of stuff. So,
just the question becomes like how
yeah.
much of them become hunters, and they said like no, they would eat dead rats, but they
Hmm.
would not, because oftentimes the dogs, even in breeding programs, are not led to eat rat. They are meant to
Mm.
kill the rat, but not to eat the rat, because if they ate the rat, the
Hmm.
possibility of that rat being poisoned, it can be killing the dog. And they said like
Right.
they
Oh,
would
yeah.
not
Yeah.
eat the rat. They would not, even if they kill the rat, they wouldn't eat the rat. And you oftentimes have that the dogs would kill the chicken, but it wouldn't eat the chicken.
Hmm.
So, and they did said, and I had that very nicely recorded. and that study still goes, because I'm just curious about how the mineral analysis is going to show up, what their code going to show up, which kind of mineral structure those dogs have. But very interestingly, that there is a big, like a farmer's market every Thursday in that particular village that we took research at. And everyone is selling just a vegetarian diet. So you have like beans, you have milk, you have cheeses, paneer usually, and all kind of fruits and veggies. But because India in this area is very humid, like very, very humid, it's not like Arizona, like dry climate. So there is not actually, what they do not sell at the market gets thrown up in a big dumpster down the road of that farm. And when the dust settles, when the people are gone, when the sunset slowly comes, there are the groups of the dogs that are coming out from the little their little shelters, and actually eating leftovers of the veggies and fruits and everything that's left there.
Yeah, I have one. I have a
Oh,
dog
really?
that
Yeah,
would
there
do
you go.
that.
That's what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
predominant, and then now we would ask the question: if those dogs are free roaming dogs, and they are literally, to think about that species appropriate diet is meat and raw and everything, like they have a next village that is fully butchery village, and they are eating everything 5 miles away. So that wouldn't be that they cannot develop another habit 5 miles away, but what keeps them close to is a social interaction with the people that they developed relationship with. And if those families are vegetarian, the dog can thrive on the vegetarian diet without any problems and live long, happy, healthy lives. Because I must say, add to that, and I was always criticized, my Serbian, when I tell this story, my Serbian, I get so many live threats, and my account gets posted, like reported and everything, because I tell the truth of my grandmother's dog. She lives in a village. She's a very humble, simple lady, and she slowly lives in a village that's actually, she and her some cousin, my other aunt, there are 2 women that are left in that city, in that little village. There is maybe 15 to 20 abandoned homes, and 2 of them are just there, and both of them have dogs. But those dogs in their life never ate anything else rather than bread, dry bread, and a little bit of milk if the milk goes bad. But those people are very, I won't say poor, but very limited in their resources. So everything that they eat, they try to eat. So there is very, very little scraps, right? But all the scraps, even if they would exist, they would never go to dog, they would go to the pig. So they would throw it to the pig, so the pig can become a source of food. So, but I must also tell you another story. The same story, actually, just a nice part of it. The dog lives outdoor. During the day, because of the cows and the sheep, the dog is chained. And then on a chain, it's a long chain, but it's still chained. And that's a moral debate, like, oh my God, she's terrible.
That's a whole other thing, right?
Right? But at the night, she's letting the dog go. And not that he does anything during the day, just sleeps, because that's what he does, and barks when someone comes. And that dog lives on the bread and water and sometimes milk. And you know when the dog was born? In July 1999. So that dog today is still alive, has a little cataract on his eye, and have 27 years. So who am I to tell her that she doesn't do something right to that dog? Right? Because my dogs, the ones that I had,
yeah, and if she lets them out, she lets them off the chain at night too. Who knows what they're scavenging? You know, there could be so much other stuff out there. Also, in the study in India, I would be interested in knowing what I know India is very famous for their mix of herbs and spices and things like that.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that, is always getting to the dogs as well, if he's just eating the leftovers.
Yeah,
so that would be interesting to know, because I know that they have a very strong herbal background.
Yeah, they do, and that's what they do. They because we even talk to our friend that's from India, and we were like, I was talking about her, like, what are you kind of like, what's your family? Because I know she's vegetarian. So she's vegetarian by culture, and there is no way they're going to put any meat in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, like, what are your families feeding your dog with? Well, she said, like, all the leftovers. And what other leftovers? She said, like, well, paneer gets very fast off, right? Then beans, oftentimes. The way they cook it, they sometimes they cook too much, but the beans are very spicy. It's everything is
Right.
inside, right?
They're
That
eating
you
a
said
lot
now.
of that
But
plant-based
also, when we said
goodness.
those scavenging dogs are capable of, as you said, like maybe go out there and do something and find something. But in India, you have a lot of, because there is still a very much caste system in India. And you have families that are pretty high-end in caste system. They would have pets, the dogs that live with them inside the home. Those dogs do not go outside and scavenge, because those dogs might be ended up being a doodles and moodles, because India is very advanced in the conformation world, breeding structure, but it's not isolated from this crossbreed madness that we also see today here. Those dogs is predominantly vegetarian diet, and they live like no less than the Western dogs that are predominantly
It is
eating.
said also in the scientific studies that study this, they say the major thing that marks a domesticated dog from a wild canid, if you will, not just wolf, but a wild canid in general, is their ability to process carbohydrates. That is the one thing, because if you have a wild canid who is like a wolf or the same, they do primarily eat a kill. And then supplement with grasses and herbs and things like that. So
and now, and also we need to see that actually as the body composition, the amount of the mineral, the structure of the proteins, the complexity of the proteins, the easiness of because what we do is actually we eat meat and then digest it into the amino acid to create another type of the protein that we build within ourselves. So kind of like we take the thing and then we put it in a pieces and then build something else out from it. And but the whole point is in that whole structure, the minerals are the sparkle of life as a guiding force to this reaction to happen within us. And also we can maybe actually talk about that, because I think like what we do in a professional grooming environment relates to a microbiome. And the microbiome is something that the skin has it, the mouth has it, the eyes has it, the stomach has it. And actually, we never touch that actually digestion of the food and anything within the food is helped by the body itself and acid.
you have to have it. You have to have it. And humans get all kinds of different things because they don't have enough gut microbiome to make the food into what we need. I mean, that happens a lot.
And I think this is a great entrance into a next episode in which we can talk about the microbiome as a complete separate body within the body that actually does the work. And then how the stress and how the wrong nutrition or malnutrition or environment influence, because we do need to admit that our dogs today live in the same polluted world that we live.
Well, and stress will kill off the microbiome. It actually depletes your body of that. That's why we need so much magnesium nowadays, because our very lifestyle is depleting our magnesium all the time. And then we need to supplement that as well. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. Without that, because we're having stress, we're depleted in our microbiome, and then we can't process our regular food that we should be eating.
And also a very important point is pollution of our air, of our earth, of our water, and everything that comes. But also pollution and a living environment for average human of the 130 pounds would be far away from the little of the pollutants that a dog that are living in the same environment and that are averaging 20 pounds have completely different way of how they process polluted air, polluted water, and polluted earth or soil. And what is the and then I think like microbiome is a great topic for the next
Mhm.
episode, because now we open the door for even if you feed your dog a perfect diet, even if you try so hard to give them the best, if the microbiome is not in place, nothing gets digested from that food.
Right.
Because on top of everything of that, oftentimes the lack of acid, we would always say, oh, the acid is too strong, and that's why the dogs vomit so easily, because that's their competitive advantage, evolutionary advantage, that they vomit out everything much easier than the humans. They sound like very uh, kind of like when they are vomiting, it sounds like they are struggling too much, but that's what they do. That's what the mother does to their little
Mhm.
puppies. It's like regurgitate the food that's inside her stomach. So, but the whole point of today's world, in which you know that don't give the dog the bone, right? Don't give them the bone, because it can, cause the constipation, and it can cause the rupture of the
The
stomach, or the
splintering and all the
splinter and
things.
everything. Oh my God! And then
Hmm.
what is the number one emoji that comes in the mind when you think of a dog? Would be a bone. I guess like that somehow comes
Hmm.
together, like a bone
Bones
and
belong to vultures.
bones. Yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, maybe. So
Yeah.
I think like, and then we didn't actually touch through this episode. Maybe we need to do that next time again. Like how all of this impacts actually a behavior,
Hmm.
because there is a key. We actually, this was like introduction in that, and maybe next time we can continue on this, because we need to come to the point of how do we deal with the dogs that are built wrongly, because the
Hmm.
because the choices that their pet parents do. Because as you said, I was hooked to the
Hmm.
what was that you said, hill science, right?
Hmm.
Right, and then you go to the vet and they say no, do this and do that, and why the people are so scared to do the cooking for themselves, or go raw, or add supplements, or do
Because
this or
we've
do
been
that.
taught to
Yeah,
listen to these experts. And the experts have now been compromised sometimes in
a
such a
lot.
way that they are no longer an expert on what they need to be an expert in. Um,
And I had an amazing, because they said like, oh, you are missing nutrients. And then they said like they have these Excel sheets that they are putting together, and then they calculated what the nutrients are the most needed for the dog, and then this, that, and blah, blah, blah. But the whole point, without dogs eating the natural food, remains, because we can add nutrients to the body that we know exist. And there's
mhm,
so many nutrients and so many minerals and even so many vitamins that we didn't discover yet. And they
mhm.
do exist in the soil and in the plants and in the meat. We just cannot look for them because we don't know they exist. And
Right,
if
right.
we go after only dry food that is made out of the what we perceive this world is made of, and
Hmm.
that's just assumption, because even Mendeleev, when he came up with the basic system of the elements, a periodic system of the elements, he came with this that made sense, but that not necessarily is the entire world out there. And every
Hmm.
single day and every single week and every single month and every single year, we discover more of unknown.
Hmm.
And that's
Well,
why
what's
eating.
crazy, and it's very in tune with what you're saying, is that, yeah, when we may discover all these things and we may supplement with all of these things, but if we don't have the microbiome to interact with those minerals and take them where they need to go, that ruins everything. Then we have a
Yes.
sick dog, we have a sick child, we have a sick mom or a dad. All that matters. We have a dog. Just as in humans, if we get low blood sugar because our metabolism is not working correctly, we feel faint, we have to sit down, we get lightheaded, we don't
Mm.
act right. Some people get angry. Why would that be any different for dogs who we are responsible for feeding?
Yeah.
In a general sense. So, I mean, that all ties into what you're saying, and I love it. I think this does need to be talked about more.
Yeah. So we need to
It does
give this.
affect them.
We need to give this episode a second
I
second
think so
part,
too, because that
because
will
I
lead
think.
into the microbiome, and then we can discuss how that may be affecting how they react on the table. I know
Yeah.
dogs that have been loved since they were a puppy and still act very fearful. That's just their personality. And maybe it has something to do with what they're eating, what they're feeding, the amount of toxins in their personal environment.
Mm.
All these things really matter.
And one thing also that now you opened the door, so I guess like we are slowly getting to the closure of this episode, but I'm sure we should keep talking about this in our next episode. So picking up the topic would be very easy because we're just going to bring this to a closure within another episode. But there is very interesting, science of the thermodynamics says that the nature always strives to give a best result to maximum effect by using a less possible amount of the energy for the produced result and outcome. So if we do give the dog everything digested through all of these hyper overproduction and I'm talking about a high produced food, produced food with added vitamins and added minerals, and everything is added because in some Excel sheet it says this should be in a food. And that food comes inside a dog's body, and the dog body doesn't need to do nothing in order to access all of those minerals and vitamins and proteins and amino acids. That's already amino acids. Because sometimes when you really learn how to read labels, then you get panic attack of what's actually inside there. It's very nicely worded. It's the meat meal have such a nice name. It sounds so expensive and important, but when you get to the FDA webpage and you learn about what everything can be in a meat meal, and the manufacturers does not need to disclose it, right? The meat meal, and then because oftentimes they would say like no preservative added. And when you hear no preservative added, that immediately means that if you check that food, you will find preservative. Just manufacturer said, I didn't put it there. But if I buy ingredients that already include preservative, I'm not responsible for that because I
it goes on and on. Yeah.
I disclosed that I didn't put them in.
Yeah.
And then the whole point of what I wanted to say here is that we need to give real food to a dog, because then the real microbiome and real body gonna do something with that food in order to digest it. If we already give to the dogs already digested food and already cooked and already mineral analysis, Excel table sheet, whatever, the body doesn't need to do nothing. All of those microbiome loses its purpose, and no body gonna keep doing what's unnecessary. That often do you remember how
well, and I think you really have to think about it, and do your research out there in Wonderland, really start thinking about, here we have dogs who are surviving on bread and milk. And then we have dogs who have the absolute best money can buy, research can get, absolutely, and they're failing. Something is wrong. Something is not connecting. There's pieces missing in the research that we're not thinking of.
I oftentimes say that if our grandparents would see what we do with the dogs today, they would probably rotate and roll in the graves. But also, in the essence, I must say that those dogs, no matter what we think from this perspective, have dignified life, no matter what we think about it, because the dog's lifespan shortens. The quality of the life of the dog shortens. In all of this DNA of our emotional awareness and empathy awareness and want to do best for everyone and everything, we fail dogs so much. Then I was 2 years ago, I was reading the research saying every 1 in 8 dogs going to develop some sort of the cancer. The same constant study in motion, because that's a live research. Nowadays, I said it a couple of days ago, I read it, every 3rd dog gonna develop some sort of cancer.
It's just getting worse and worse. I think people are the same.
And, yeah. And we have, but also, I kind of, when it comes to a human and dog, I always take a side of the dog, because we are knowledgeable and we have resources to make choices. And when I make a choices to eat this or live this lifestyle or do this or do that, that's on the end, no matter of the circumstances, my choice. But the dog does not have a choice. The dog rely on a belief of the owner. So the dog is always trapped in this bubble of what their pet parents think is best for them. And unfortunately, because education does not exist, science is not on consent. There is no right or wrong yet, neither direction to go. It's a confusion. And what we try to do with this, actually, we talk to professionals, but this is also what the professionals can take and communicate with their pet parents, that they get in touch every single day. Informed decision, research responsibility, hard choices, fear, overcoming obstacles, and never give up on the well-being of the dog, because they don't have another choice. They don't have an option. They cannot, like a little children, they depend on the belief of their caregivers. And so when you said like we are also having this lifestyle and hurts us and everything, but
we still have the choice.
we still have a choice, and we still the choices are maybe limited. Maybe the circumstances in which choices need to be done or go after the choices and put them in action, right, are difficult and maybe unsustainable, but we have a choice. Animals that we promise gonna care for does not have that.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, it's nice, a nice full stop to put on this such a deep topic. I guess
that is a deep topic, yeah.
Ooh,
and I'm sure we'll get pushback from nutritionists and veterinarians and whatever. But I mean, it's a discussion, and that's what it's meant to be. We're just discussing it. I don't think either you or I are putting our foot down and saying, "Okay, this is the science." I think we need more resources. I think we need more research, but it can't be the type of research that is funded because somebody's going to sell something.
Yeah,
it has to be the kind of research because we need to know that kind.
Yeah. So. And also, I like studies that I can read, this is paid for by, right? Disclosed. And when you disclose, then it's my choice to see how I'm going to look at it. But a lot of studies...
Yeah, at least they inform you of the bias.
Yes. But a lot of studies are actually hidden in a blueprint, because maybe just in a third reference that you don't necessarily need to read, it says in the middle of the fine print that actually that study was funded by, paid for by. But yeah, until we learn how to, because the real, I like talking to my mentors, and I have one of them is had research on the etiology department of the at Orvosi University in Hungary, in Budapest. And every single time when he gives a presentation on something, he said, this is what I believe today. And probably once I'm done with all of this, tomorrow I'm going to make another paper that's going to be completely in opposite what I just said today.
And that's the way science works. Yes, that's the way it works.
Because once you made it public and once you make it there for everyone, that's the first moment when you need to start to tear it apart and to see where that's going to lead you. And the real science going to always do it. It's never black and white. And just when we understand how much what we know, we come to a point to see how much unknown is out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like we are on a great path. I would say that we opened a great discussion.
Well, these things need to be talked about. They need to be talked about because I think too, the grooming industry is so afraid of offending someone or afraid of saying something maybe their teacher taught them the opposite or whatever. And that's okay. There was a time when all those beliefs were true, and maybe not so much now. They're not true. Now we know better things, and hopefully any students you and I would ever have are going to take that next step and prove us to maybe be not so true.
Yeah.
We are true today, but maybe not tomorrow, because new information is always happening.
That's always kind of like what the most important thing is: quote the author, quote the one that you build on, and then help them grow as well. And that's what I always love to inspire my students in every single task I give them. Oftentimes it would be like discussion and a peer review. They're going to review each other in the things. And I think like all of that is critical in building people to think critically about everything. And when you are thinking critically and take nothing for granted, and always look forward with that open eye about what if I just change the angle, observing this, Look how we came from the species appropriate diet, talking about raw food on the beginning, getting to India and learning about how the dogs are eating like nothing but the scraps of the vegetarian diet and thriving, ending up with my grandma who is feeding dog with it was bread and
milk.
Bread and water, I must.
Bread and water.
Yeah, because the milk is coming
Yeah.
just occasionally
Sometimes.
when it spoils, right? So kind of
Right.
like, it's not the milk, because that sounds like an amazing dinner
Right.
to the dog. I said that's party, but that all opens the door for actually maybe our emotions got in the way with the dogs, and what became their evolutionary advantage today actually cost them life.
That's fair. That's fair.
Thank you, Michelle, so much for being open
Thank
from
you.
week to week. And I see like we are getting so nice together in this togetherness of ours. And I really love how we can, open a little door and then explore here and go there. And
It needs to be talked
understand.
about and without fear. No fear. Just talk about it.
Talking, creating a safe space in which you can say what you think without being afraid that someone's going to take something against you because you have a different viewpoints. And that's kind of like when we create a world in which we're going to cherish differences, no matter how extreme they are, then we're going to actually live in a world that's going to be much better for every single one of us, including dogs. But also on the other hand, the dogs can initiate that movement to happen in the heart of every single one of us. So without further ado, let's finish today. And thank you so much for everyone watching this episode, either live or in its replay. And until our next air on next Monday, Michelle and I wish you nothing but the best. And to you, Michelle, I wish all the beautiful week inspired with new thinking. And I cannot wait for you to get on call tomorrow.
And a shameless plug for both of us. I am going to be teaching at the school. We're going to get together and hopefully we'll produce that so that the recording is available also to watch. So that's going to be really nice. We're going to talk about therapy as far as skin goes.
Look for the announcement about Beneath the Coat workshop that we're going to host in Arlington, Texas, September. What did we say? September?
It's October, I think, 11th, 12th, and 13th.
11, 12, and 13 of October. But more details about that coming soon. But plan October 11, 12, 13 to be in Arlington, Texas. And more details going to be announced very soon. Okay.
Yes.
So that's the dream to have. Thank you, Michelle, once again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
and until
Sasha.
next Monday, we love you. Bye.